Okay. Go ahead. All right. Welcome, everybody. This is Anudis is Now Community Workshop, a presentation on financial literacy. Thank you for joining us today. Just by being here, you're taking a chance and seizing an opportunity to take control of your finances, and that's very important, especially nowadays. So welcome, welcome. I'm going to wait a moment or two for more folks to join. While we do that, going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. All right. Did everybody see everything all right? Get a little thumbs up there. Good. All right. So this is the community workshop we're doing today. We're doing this in partnership with Bank of America. And I want to say too, to be clear, because we are talking about finances, it's important to remember that we are not qualified to offer financial advice to you about your own personal finances. Those are private. This information should be used to empower yourself. And these tips and tricks we learned today will help you better understand the different topics we're going to discuss. But again, if there's anything specific about finances, your own personal finances, how should I spend this money, you should seek out a banker. I also want to say thank you to the Barancik Foundation. Without their help, we wouldn't be able to do this today. So thank you very much for your support of our mission. So if you need to access the Spanish interpretation, you need to actually find this presentation through Zoom. If you're on Facebook and you need help understanding this in Spanish, find the Zoom link and open it through the Zoom application. When you are opened in that application, these are the instructions here. You can click More. It can be in the lower right or in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Then click Language Interpretation. Then click Spanish, and then mute the original audio. Then you will be able to only hear our lovely translator's voice, and she will help you understand what we're talking about. We'll leave this slide up for a moment, just in case anybody needs a moment to access the translation. Okay. So thank you for joining us. I do want to mention we are Unidos Now. This is our group. We're a wonderful organization, and our overall mission is to elevate the quality of life of the Latino Hispanic community through education, integration, and civic engagement. How do we do this? We really truly empower young people. Our focus is on education. We have clubs at each high school. We have elementary school programs. We have middle school programs. We're also offering free FAFSA workshops. So students can apply for financial aid. Seniors can apply for federal aid going to college or trade school. And we also offer parental engagement workshops and, of course, community workshops like this one here. So, Don, go ahead and take it away for a moment.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning, everyone. My name is Don Ullman, and I'm a Unidos Now volunteer, and I'm glad to spend some time with you this morning. As Jerry said, the fact that you are with us suggests that you appreciate the importance of managing your money and your financial matters. And it may be interesting for you to know 3/4 of all Americans say they need help with money matters. So if any of you feel that way, you're not alone. So we're going to talk about things like budgeting, managing credit cards, and paying off student debt. All of these are important and can give you a sense of financial independence. So specifically, we have a few different topics this morning: how to open a bank account and why, how to create a budget, credit cards, credit scores, and what to know about interest rates, a brief comment on payday loans and why to avoid them, and probably something that may be important to many of you, what to think about and what to know about financing a car. Jerry, if you can walk us through the B of A site.
Absolutely. So this website is done through Bank of America. It's free to go to, and it really is an awesome tool. There are so many different little classes that you can take for free. And of course, if you'd like, this is how you can access the website. If you type in this up here, the top website, that'll access the website in English. To access the website in Spanish, and the translation is good, you simply put a /es at the end. We're going to go ahead and take a moment to look at this website so I can show you how to navigate it. And also, just in case you find the English one, how to get to the Spanish version. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to, can you see the website, Don, now? Can you see me typing? Do you see it? Good, excellent. So this is the Bank of America website here. As you can see, there's a lot of topics, but if you need to access it in Spanish, in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see it says en español. Haga click aquí. Let's click there. And then there. You'll see everything that they have in English is also in Spanish. Now, while I do speak some Spanish, I'm going to go ahead and, for my own ease, navigate the English one here. But you can see too, if you have any questions that we don't answer today or we're unable to answer, I suggest strongly to go to this website, look for something important to you, and go ahead and look. And the interesting part here is too, you can actually personalize what you need. So if you happen to be one of our students watching this right now, you'd probably click just starting out. Working and growing, older folks, hey, I'm nearing retirement, or if you're retired. And what they'll do is you'll go through this, answer different questions about yourself. Am I working full-time? Am I a student? Am I self-employed? You can, of course, click all of these, or none of them if you'd like. You just click what's relevant to you. So I'm working full-time, thank goodness. And of course, too, they give you different topics to choose from. What's important? Do you want to save for retirement? Do you want to pay off some debt? Do you want to get your credit score up? There's all sorts of different topics here that you can cover. So let's just click saving for college. And then even more details they ask you about. Do you want to give back? Do you want to get ready for tax season? Are you getting married, moving, retiring? There's all sorts of different topics that you can discuss. So it just really does depend on you and who you are. And by the way, I do notice some questions in the chat. I cannot see them right now, but we will have a moment for questions at the end. So we're going to go back at the end and look at the questions and see what we can and cannot answer. So that's what the website looks like. And
right. Jerry, do we need to check to see if any of those questions regard procedures as we go forward?
Let me see here. Fortunately, no, there's no question. There's just somebody sharing links, which is very, very helpful. So thank you.
Okay.
So go ahead, Don, take it away.
All right, slide 6, how to open a bank account. Let's talk for a minute on why you would want to open a bank account. I mean, first of all, it's a safe place to keep your money, your deposits, if you will. If you open a checking account, it gives you ease of paying for things and a safe way of doing so. Having a bank account will help you establish credit and also help provide a sense of financial security. So let's talk about what you need to do to open an account. Jerry, if you could just, yeah. Thank you. I want to stress that while numero uno, Social Security number is listed, for some of you who may not have a Social Security number, that is not always necessary. Many banks do not have them. We'll see that in a minute. But you will need some sort of government issued ID. It could be the government of your home country. You'll need personal information that shows where you live. And you may need or want to have an initial deposit as you open an account. This is a pretty busy slide from Bank of America, but as you take a look at it, it will show you, as I mentioned, you do not necessarily need a Social Security card. Bank of America accepts other forms of identification, and they can certainly be a good source for you if and as you think about opening a savings and or a checking account. Next slide. So as you work to open a bank account, let's talk about a few things that you need to consider. The first point talks about something called overdraft protection and low overdraft fees. Well, let's define what an overdraft is. Let's say you have $100 in your account, but you need to make a purchase for $120. Well, if you do that, you'll create an overdraft. In other words, you will have overdrawn your account. Most banks will cover you for that additional $20, but most banks will also charge you a fee for doing so. So that's something to think about if you feel that you may encounter that kind of a situation. Check your bank's overdraft policies and what fees they charge. And fees in general are something to think about. For example, many banks charge a fee just to open a checking account or possibly to write a certain larger number of checks, but many banks do not. And it depends on what bank you choose, and where they are and what you want. Similarly, some banks will require you to hold a minimum balance in a checking account. That's a good idea if you're able to do so, but if your cash flow fluctuates, sometimes that may be difficult for you. Again, you want to either avoid a bank that forces you to hold a minimum balance, or at least find one that doesn't charge you a fee if you do not do so. Other things to think about as you look for a bank: ATMs, automatic teller machines. I'm sure you've all seen them. They're pretty much around everywhere, where you can put the card that the bank gives you into the machine and withdraw cash. You want to think about a bank that offers a number of them near where you live for convenience. Some banks will charge you a fee to use their ATMs, though most will not if you use a machine from your own bank. Something else that may be important for those of you that are used to doing things on your phone. I'm pretty old-fashioned and typically don't, but actually Bank America does have, I do use Bank America, and they do have a very good phone app, and it is fairly easy to use. So that is something you might wish to consider. And again, as I mentioned a moment ago, presumably if you go to talk to a banker about opening an account, you don't want to travel too far. You're going to want to go to a branch that's near you for convenience. Again, you may be able to open an account online. I personally would suggest going to see a banker and opening an account in person as you start out. And then I think you'll find after that initial meeting, you can do most everything you need to do online on a laptop or on a phone. So our second topic is budgeting, watching your spending, understanding debt. And you'll be pleased to know we have a number of little videos to share with you, so you won't always have to be listening to me. We will get there in a moment. Let's just take a look at a few things on this slide. Do's and don'ts of debt, and we'll cover these topics in detail as we go through this presentation this morning. If you do need to go into debt, be very mindful of paying it off as well as you can. Certainly pay the minimum balance every month, where it says paying on time. That's what that refers to. try to stick to a spending plan. If you can, pay more than the minimum required balance, because as you can see on the right, if you're able to make a higher payment, then you can pay off that debt much more quickly, and you can avoid a large amount of interest, which is, you can see, can add up very, very quickly. So that's an amount over and above paying back for your purchases. And that's pure profit to the bank or the credit card company. We'll get to that. And simply an out-of-pocket cost to you. There are a number of ways of thinking about paying off debt. This is a new term to me, the snowball method. If you have several different accounts, I guess that method suggests, in order to make it easier for you, pay off the smaller balances first. But the other thing to consider, if you have different accounts at different interest rates, and we'll talk more about interest rates shortly, the ones with the higher interest rates are those that are going to cost you the most. So ideally, try to pay those off first. And I believe, Jerry, this is our first video.
Yes, can you see it?
I can.
All right, let's see if everybody can hear it.
Strategies for paying down debts.
Does it look good?
If you've ever been in debt, you know it can feel like running on a treadmill. Every month you pay a little to this loan, a little to that card, and eventually you feel like you've gotten, well, nowhere. But it doesn't have to be that way. Not if you have a debt repayment strategy in place. One that helps you map out a plan that's realistic enough to follow. Stick to the plan, and before you know it, you'll be moving in the right direction, chipping away at your debt. For this discussion, let's focus on high-interest credit card debt. So let's get started. While there are many ways you can attack your debt, there are two schools of thought in particular that we'll discuss here. The first is commonly referred to as the snowball method. It's when you pay off your debts by balance, the lowest first. Another tried and true method is to pay your debts according to their interest rates, starting with the highest rates first. For this discussion, let's call it the high rate method. So how do these strategies actually work? Let's start with the snowball method. First, make a list of all of your credit card balances from lowest amount to highest. If two balances are similar, prioritize the card with the higher interest rate. When you pay your monthly bills, make the minimum payment due for all of your debts. Then take any additional money you have available and put it toward the debt with the smallest balance. Do this each month until you've paid off your smallest debt. When you pay it off, don't use that account again until your debt is cleared up. Whether you hide the card in a drawer, freeze the card in a block of ice, or close the account, the point is to stop increasing your debt. The next step.
Did we lose the audio, Jerry?
Continues to grow and grow, creating, wait for it, a snowball effect. You might be amazed how quickly that can happen. Now let's talk about the high rate method. Again, make a list of all your debts, but instead arrange them according to their interest rates, with the highest interest rate first. Using this method, you'll also pay the minimum amount due across the board. Then, you'd focus on sending as much as you can afford to the account with the highest interest rate. Keep doing that until it's paid off. Once your balance is zero, concentrate on the card with the next highest rate on your list, and so on. Either of these methods can be a great way to get yourself out of debt, and while both methods have their supporters, it's really up to you to decide what works best. Supporters of the snowball method say that you'll feel a boost each time you pay off an account, and those small victories keep you motivated to reach your goal. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Marketing Research says that the act of closing accounts after they're paid off, regardless of size, is a better predictor of whether you'll get out of debt in the long run. On the other hand, supporters of the high rate method will tell you that over time, you'll save much more money and get out of debt sooner by paying off your higher interest rate debts first. What's right for you? Well, it's a personal choice. But if you want to get out of debt paying as little as possible, it's probably a savvier decision to use the high rate method because you'll get rid of your most expensive debt sooner and pay less over the long run. But if you're the type of person who has trouble sticking to a plan, or if you need constant motivation, then the snowball method might be a better fit for you. Oh, one more thing. There are some instances where you might not want to go it alone. Like, let's say you're unable to make your minimum payment, or you're having a difficult time making ends meet otherwise. If that's the situation you're in, you might benefit from talking to a certified financial professional. But it's important that you look for one who works for an accredited, nonprofit consumer credit counseling agency and is a member of the National Foundation for Credit Counseling. Whatever you choose to do, the most important thing is that you've decided to get yourself out of debt in the first place. And with some determination, dedication, and a plan, you can get out of debt once and for all. And that's something that you really can't put a price on.
So as you can see, this is one of dozens and dozens of videos that they have. It's a really great resource. Let's go ahead and move on.
Okay, Jerry, thank you. By the way, I note that the fellow's voice in the video sounds remarkably like you.
Well, maybe it is.
Maybe it is. So in terms of debt, obviously you want to avoid being in too much debt. So we should back up a step and talk about spending plans and budgeting. So you generally know what your sources of income are. The key is to think about what your spending is. There are things you have to spend money on that you need, obviously food, gas, your rent or your housing costs and so on. There are things that you want for yourself and your family. And we'll show you a grid in a moment that really helps you to lay out, looking at all of your spending against your income. You can track this, you can adjust this, and it's a very powerful tool for achieving financial independence. And I think we have another video. This is a video-laden section.
It is, and Esther, our translator, noted that the videos do go fast. So
Right.
I'm going to try to pause it from time to time so that she can catch up. So
Are they able to see the videos in Spanish? I think they are in Spanish on the website, right?
I honestly do not know. I hope they are.
I think they would be if they want to go back and look at them.
Yes, and of course, if they don't have the Spanish translated videos, everybody, you can click here below the video where it says transcript, and every single word from the video is here. And so what you can do is it's a lot, but you can copy and paste this into Translate. Another tool too, let me see what happens when I click in Spanish here. Cómo ahorrar. Let's see here. Oh, it is in Spanish. Excellent. Yeah. So let's go ahead and watch this one in Spanish. Let's see what Esther says. Yes, Esther says, and Cynthia as well notes that they are in Spanish. So let's go ahead and watch this here.
Probablemente ya conoce algunos conceptos básicos, como que preparar su propio café o traer su almuerzo al trabajo pueden ayudarle a ahorrar cientos de dólares al año. Si lo está haciendo, continúe haciéndolo. Pero veamos algunas otras maneras para poder ahorrar en sus gastos diarios y cómo algunas decisiones simples que usted toma a diario pueden ayudarle a ahorrar dinero. Empecemos por el supermercado, porque hay muchas maneras sencillas de reducir su recibo de compras. Es probable que ya haga estas cosas: hacer una lista para reducir las compras impulsivas, recortar cupones o usar aplicaciones para buscar ofertas, e incluso estudiar el precio por unidad para ayudarle a rendir al máximo su dinero. Pero hay más maneras de poder ahorrar. Por ejemplo, cuando vea una oferta o un descuento, sea estratégico. Los descuentos y ofertas pueden ser grandes oportunidades para ahorrar en cosas que necesita, pero a menudo las tiendas ofrecen incentivos en artículos que muchos no comprarían normalmente. Puede valer la pena ser selectivo al considerar los descuentos que le puedan ofrecer. Y mientras evalúa sus prioridades, gaste en lo importante y ahorre en lo que no lo es. Por ejemplo, para algunas personas, los alimentos orgánicos o sus marcas favoritas pueden ser importantes. Para otros, lo importante puede ser otra cosa. El punto es que puede valer la pena gastar un poco más en las cosas que le importan, pero busque ahorrar en las cosas que son menos importantes para usted para apegarse a su presupuesto. Hacer pequeños cambios como estos pueden ayudarle a ahorrar dinero sin renunciar a lo importante. Finalmente, antes de hacer una lista de compras, considere lo que realmente come y prepara. Una buena idea es planificar sus comidas con anticipación o decidir comer al menos una comida más en casa cada semana. Esto puede ayudarle a evitar tirar alimentos echados a perder que no comió o pedir comida para llevar al no tener comida en casa para la semana. Esto puede ahorrarle cientos de dólares al año. Estar al tanto de los gastos y facturas del hogar. Probablemente ya apaga las luces cuando se va de una habitación y desenchufa los electrónicos cuando no los usa, ¿verdad? Pero existen otros pequeños cambios que puede hacer y que pueden ayudarle a ahorrar incluso más en el hogar. Por ejemplo, ¿sabía que la mayoría de los servicios públicos cobran más por la electricidad a distintas horas del día? Las horas de más consumo, como el mediodía, cuando más personas usan electricidad, a menudo tienen tasas mucho más altas comparadas con la mañana o tarde en la noche. Lavar la ropa o usar el lavavajillas en horas de menos consumo podrían ayudarle a ahorrar en su factura de servicios. Puede visitar el sitio web de su empresa de servicios públicos para ver si muestran sus horas de más consumo o contáctelos directamente. Pasemos al transporte. El precio de la gasolina puede ser impredecible, pero la tecnología podría ayudarle a ahorrar. Hay muchos sitios web y aplicaciones que pueden ayudarle a ubicar la gasolinera de su área que puede ofrecer precios más baratos. Y según la frecuencia con la que conduce y el lugar donde vive, puede considerar no usar el auto en absoluto. El transporte público podría ser una opción, y existen programas para compartir el auto, para alquilarlos a corto plazo y a un buen precio. Y para las personas dedicadas, ¿qué les parece la bicicleta? Sin duda, es una alternativa rentable y saludable a conducir y al transporte público. Puede ser fácil seguir a otros y gastar de más, pero intente ser creativo y ocasionalmente planifique actividades con amigos y familia con anticipación, para ayudar a evitar tentaciones como salidas a comer espontáneas. Ahorrar dinero no implica sacrificar la diversión. Vale la pena pensar primero para saber dónde gasta y qué está dispuesto a reducir. No hace falta que haga cuentas en cada decisión que tome, pero ser consciente sobre dónde gasta su dinero y cómo esos pequeños cambios aquí o allá pueden acumularse a largo plazo. Le pueden ayudar a ser creativo y a buscar su manera de recortar costos diarios.
Okay. So if you are watching through Facebook right now, Facebook Live, and you do not speak Spanish, do not worry. You can, of course, access this in English as well. So we're going to go ahead and go back here and move to the next slide.
Yeah, this may be difficult for some of you to see. And again, I'm sure it's available in Spanish. But both Jerry and I thought this was an extremely useful slide. I spoke to it a moment ago. Or at the top, there are places to fill in your income. And then along the large section are different categories of spending, including an area that they note as entertainment, where you can put in things that you would like to do, such as going to restaurants, movies, etc. And when you tally them all up, the middle column is for planned spending, and the far right column is where you would keep track of your actual spending. And you can see how you're doing week to week, month to month, whatever works for you. And if you stick to this plan, going back to what we just discussed, it will help you to minimize the amount of debt that you have to carry. So we think this is a very useful slide. We'll see it again in just a moment.
Absolutely. And if anyone would like a copy of this document, my email is going to be up at the end of the presentation. So reach out to me and I will send you a copy for free. But let's go ahead and look back at some tips from Bank of America's website here about creating a budget. Go ahead, Don.
Okay. Jerry, I guess we can just sort of scroll through this. I've touched on these points, and again, maybe the best way to sort of enforce them as you think about them is to look at that checklist we just talked about. Note your net income, track your spending. Again, note what you plan to spend, and track it against what you actually spend. And one thing we didn't really talk about is goal setting. As you think about these different spending categories, again, some of these categories will be spending that you absolutely cannot avoid. I mean, of course, you have a mortgage payment, a rent payment, groceries, and so on. But some of the spending are things you can impact. I think the video talked about auto expenses. We're going to talk about that more in just a couple of minutes. There are different ways of setting how much you drive, what kind of gas you have, what sort of car you have, and so forth. You can think about how much entertainment you want or need for you and your family. As a silly example, perhaps, do you have a steak dinner instead of a hamburger? But it is important to set up weekly and monthly spending goals. And then, as it says in step 4, make a plan. After you think about your goals, try to make a plan that enables you to stick to it. And then, as it says in step 5, if you find that some of those goals are just too difficult, not realistic, adjust them, but maybe you can make changes elsewhere so that you still hit your overall target. And take a look at this as often as necessary in order to try to stay on target and stay with your goals.
Absolutely. And it's just, again, a great example. Before I even made this presentation, I had not heard of Bank of America's website. But this is just an incredible resource. There are so many different classes you can take and topics you can investigate on your own. Let's go ahead and continue here. I'm going to look at the budget in a little bit more detail. I think, Don, you actually mentioned all of this just a moment ago. So this is just a quick sort of rundown of what he mentioned. And again, I like this, that there's 2 columns. You plan out things, but then life happens. Reality is here. And it's important every month to, compare these 2 columns and see if you should plan a little bit more than you think you would. All right. So key takeaways from this, Don, you want to go ahead and hop back on?
Sure. And can you just back up to the last slide for a moment? Is that possible? One thing I didn't mention is number 3, credit cards, which are an important component of a spending plan. And we're going to talk more about those in just a moment. Thanks, Jerry. So again, we will get to this in more detail in just a moment. Be responsible with credit. As you saw in the videos, we all need to go into debt at some point for some amount of money, but keep in mind what you owe, how much you have to pay for it, what your interest rates are, and work to repay that debt. Where it says learn and apply banking basics, we talked about the importance of having a bank account as part of your financial plan, and budgeting. And I think, do we have one more video, Jerry, on budgeting?
Not on this slide.
Okay.
Let's see I think it sort of ties in when we talk about credit cards.
Okay.
So the next topic.
Yep. As I mentioned, we're going to spend a few minutes on credit cards, and we'll see more of this in a moment. But let's define what is a credit card. I mean, simply put, when you have a credit card, it enables you to buy something now and pay for it later. But the key part is paying for it later. It doesn't feel as if you're paying for something when you use a credit card. But as we'll see in a moment, it's very important to realize you're deferring a payment, which is not a bad thing. It enables you to buy things on a more convenient basis, but it also means you have to be careful and thoughtful about how you use it. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what to look for when choosing a card, what credit card should and shouldn't be used for, and how the credit agencies keep track of your credit score. In other words, how responsible are you when using credit, and how much credit are you deserving of having? So again, why get a credit card? It's good to have one or a small number of cards because you may need them. as you go out and purchase something, you may not have the cash right away. We've all run into that situation any number of times. But in addition, if you have a few credit cards and you're responsible with them, it will help you as you try to get a mortgage to buy a home. It will help you as you're buying a car. If you take a new job, they may do a credit check on you. So it's very important and useful to have a good credit history. Again, credit cards are useful if used correctly. So I talked about this a moment ago, a line of credit. That means you can spend money as you buy things without using cash, but of course, it's going to be key to pay that credit card bill every month. And if and as you do so, the card companies may allow you to borrow more money as long as you're able to and as long as you're responsible with it. Right. Do we have a video here?
Not on the last slide, no.
Okay. I don't see the numbers on the slide, so.
Yeah, no, I think it's coming up in a moment.
Okay. When you're choosing a credit card, just as when you're choosing a bank account, there are a number of things that you want to look for. Virtually all credit cards will charge you some sort of fee. Can be a yearly fee. Most of them are not a lot of money. Most of the credit cards make their money by charging you interest, as we've mentioned. But try to find a card with a low fee or no fee. And more importantly, as I just said, look at the interest rate that the credit card company will charge you. Obviously, the smaller number, the better. And there can be a surprising range of interest rates across different cards and different kinds of cards. So you need to consider whether you're getting a Visa card, a MasterCard, or a company store card, different kinds of cards at different rates. And there can be a wide range of rates. Try very hard to find the smallest interest rates. And just like with an overdraft fee at a bank that we talked about a few minutes ago, card companies will charge you late fees. In other words, if you don't make a payment on time, that is something to consider. Hopefully you will be able to make all of your payments on time. And cash advances, again, that may be necessary from time to time. You want a card that may allow you to do that, but again, keep in mind there may be extra fees for taking out cash or for going over your limit on your credit. Again, something you may have to do from time to time, but try to look at all of these different factors as you select a credit card or different credit cards to take out. Okay, we talked about point one. It is nice to have a credit card to build up your credit score, but I would emphasize you will build up your credit score if you pay your monthly balances in full and on time. If you fall behind, it will have the opposite effect and it will hurt your credit score. So again, keep cards in balance. You may never, you may have an emergency where you need to increase your balance. So as you do your best to pay it off monthly, that will help you when those emergencies arise. And one thing that people may not realize, which is a nice added benefit by having a credit card, if you purchase something on your card and it breaks, the card companies will often refund your money and enable you to replace that purchase. It's a nice feature to have. Some cards also have incentive programs. So again, if you've built up a good record of paying off your card, in those instances where you're able to maintain a good record, the more you spend, the more rewards you get. It's usually a point system. And over time, you build up those points by spending money and paying down what you owe. And that may enable you to buy, to get a reward and buy things for free and use those points to do so.
Absolutely. And real quick, I want to talk about a personal story where number 3 really helped me, especially as the holidays get closer. We're all on social media and we'll start seeing more and more advertisements asking us to buy something. And I found something that I thought was really cool. It was an awesome t-shirt. I really liked it. I looked at the company, I clicked the link. 5 minutes later, I had paid for this t-shirt. Months had gone by. I never got the shirt. Whenever I emailed the company, they sent me back some copy and paste. Sorry, we're working on it. I tried to get a refund through them, did not work. So what I did was I disputed it with my credit card company. I told my credit card company what happened, and that same day they refunded me, and then they bother the company now. So that's another benefit of that purchase protection. Like if I was on a debit card and that happened, my bank may not have helped me. But credit card companies do have a lot of power when negotiating with businesses. So that's something that may help you coming up this holiday season. And we do have a video, or no, I'm sorry, this is another sort of fact page. Go ahead and walk us through this.
Sure. Number one, when you get a new credit card, it will affect your credit, even if you don't use it. That's not a bad thing. If you have it and you use it only when you need it or don't use it very much at all, that actually can improve your credit. It's generally a benefit to have one or a very small number of cards and show that you can be responsible with them. So that can affect your credit in a positive way. On the other hand, if you pay less than what you owe each month, even if you pay something, it's still considered a missed payment. For example, if you've bought $100 worth of goods over a month and you only pay $50 at the end of the month, they're going to consider that a missed payment. And they will charge you interest on the amount that you have not paid. So again, pay the minimum that the credit card tells you. That will also help your credit. If you're unable to pay the minimum, that may hurt your credit. And then, as we saw a few minutes ago, across different cards, balances may have different interest rates. And you may have a higher rate on penalty balances, which we've talked about. If you can, pay the balance with the highest rates first, as we saw in the previous video. And if you pay only the minimum balance, obviously you'll continue to owe until your full balance is paid off. Number 5, having a high credit card limit is a good thing. Well, it can be. Generally, if the credit card company gives you a high credit card limit, it's because you are a customer in good standing and you've shown that you can use the credit card responsibly. But a high credit card limit can also be an incentive to spend money that you don't need to spend and to buy things that you don't need to buy. So keep in mind, it's good to have that limit, but it can also lead you to use more credit than you really should. And as it said in the first point, you don't have to carry a balance to build your credit history. Have the card, use it responsibly, spend only what you need. Point 7, having more credit cards isn't always a good thing. This is a key point. If I have been unclear in any way about numbers of cards, it's good to have one or a small number of cards. For example, you may have a Visa card or a MasterCard and a store card or possibly a gas company card. But having large numbers of cards, the credit agencies that rate your credit will wonder why you have them, why you have so many, how much exposure you might end up with, how much debt you might get into. And as I said earlier, it may also lead you to spend money that you really shouldn't spend. Keep a small number of cards, pay the minimum balance, pay them off as best you can, stick with your budget, and stick with your spending plans. we have referred to credit scores. There are 3 companies that follow and maintain people's credit scores. So we'll see this in a moment. And again, all the things we talked about, the better you are, the more responsible you are with the credit, the higher your credit score, the more flexibility you'll have going forward. So it's kind of what we would call a virtuous circle. As you're responsible, you are able to use more credit. But if you're irresponsible, the credit scores will note that, and you may be in a position where you have to endure some hardships to pay down your debt. So there are a number of things which we've sort of suggested in terms of how the credit rating companies look at your credit behavior. First and foremost, most importantly, as I'm sure you can tell from what Jerry and I have said, your payment history. Are you making monthly payments? Are you maintaining at least the minimum payment every month? Are you showing a responsible history of paying what you owe on your credit cards? And then, as I mentioned a moment ago, how much do you owe across all of your cards? Is it a large amount? Is it a modest amount? Is it a constant amount? Are you generally keeping about the same amount and being responsible with it? Or are you seeing a lot of spikes where you go into a large amount of debt periodically and then potentially get yourselves into some difficulty? The amount of time that you've had these cards, your bank account, whatever your financial exposure may be, the longer you can show a history of responsible behavior, the better. New credit cards, I think that just refers to the number of cards that we just talked to. Again, a modest amount. They're not going to want to see you opening a large amount of new accounts. Types of credit, you're generally just going to have personal credit cards, although some of you who are self-employed or run your own businesses may have business credit cards as well, and all of that gets looked at. Jerry, this is your favorite slide, so you have to comment on this.
Oh, all right. I do like this slide a lot. So these are some things that we've talked about before, but just to summarize, these are all things that will help push that credit score up. And it is sort of a battle. You know, life is hard, and bills keep coming and groceries keep racking up. But it's good to have a diverse amount of credit cards. You should have a couple of them, not too many, like Don had mentioned, but a few is nice. But the key thing here is to make sure you're paying your bills on time, at least every once in a while, reducing your debt balances. And as time goes on, you just slowly knock down some of those barriers that are keeping, like this young lady here, keeping her away from that green area. So just everything you can do to help pay those debts off, do it.
By the way, the credit card rating companies, they run on a scale of 300 to 800, which is why you see that on that slide. Mostly you want to be in that 600 to 700 range. I know there are 3 companies, Experian, TransUnion, and somebody can help me. There's a third I can't think of, but there are 3 of them. I'm going to pause here for a moment on this slide. You can get, Jerry, go ahead.
We have a video, actually, I forgot to mention from this slide.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and watch this video real quick.
Thanks, Jerry.
Esther, good luck.
Building credit and keeping yours healthy. Your credit score is a big part of your financial identity. It can be the most important factor in determining whether you can get a loan and how much it'll cost you. Your credit score is a number, the most common being known as a FICO score, that helps evaluate how much of a risk it is to lend you money. It simply shows how responsible or irresponsible you are with your finances. When it's good, it can help you get access to lower rates, which enables you to borrow for both short-term emergencies and longer-term, bigger ticket items. That's why falling behind on your mortgage payments, car loans, or credit card bills is not a wise move. In fact, it may damage your future ability to borrow money. So while you may still be able to get the things you need, like a home mortgage or car loan, it could cost you even more in the long run. And that's because you'll likely be charged a higher interest rate. Now, bad credit can affect you in areas of your life you wouldn't even expect. Take employers and landlords, for example. They may look at your credit score to see if you'd be a responsible employee or tenant. Some car insurance companies may also see a direct relationship between your credit score and the likelihood of you being in an accident. And in certain states, this even means you're charged a lot more for insurance. So how do you build a good credit score or protect what you've already built? In general, there are 5 things you should know about how a score is calculated using information on your credit report, some that weigh a little more heavily than others. First and foremost is your payment history. That goes for all of your bills on your credit report, not just your credit cards. This one's a biggie because it makes up a decent portion of your overall score. Creditors want to know that you pay on time, every time, even if it's just the minimum. And consistency goes a long way, so pay your bills when they're due and never skip payments. The second most important factor is how much you owe. It's a good rule of thumb to keep your total debt lower than the overall credit available to you. The lower, the better, because if you get too close to your limit, creditors may think you're biting off more than you can chew, or that you are supplementing your income with credit. So whenever possible, keep this debt to credit ratio as low as possible. Third, creditors want to see that you've been managing credit for a long time. Your credit history shows how long you've been using credit, how you've handled that responsibility, and how responsible you've been. Establishing a good long history means you're an old pro at borrowing or managing money, and are likely to repay what you borrow. Next, your score may also be affected by the mix of credit types you have. A good mix will span different types of credit, from a mortgage to credit cards to installment loans like car payments, which are repaid over time, and can help you improve your overall score. This is because it proves you have experience handling a variety of account types, instead of having a lot of accounts in just one area. And when it comes to balances, lower is always better for your score. Lastly, creditors want to know what you've been up to lately. They'll look at recently opened accounts and where you're inquiring about credit. Even if you're relatively new to credit or were just thinking about borrowing, they want to see who gave you credit and when. Also, applying for too much credit can be seen as high risk because it looks like you're desperate for loans. Take department stores, for instance. Doesn't it seem like they're always offering you 20% off if you open up a credit card? Although it could save you some cash right there at the register. Think about the possible long-term consequences of opening and paying for yet another account. So now that you know what makes up your credit score, it's important to check your credit reports because that's how your credit score is established in the first place. There are 3 national credit reporting bureaus that you should know.
Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And you're entitled to a free credit report from each of them every year, which you can request from annualcreditreport.com. But you should know that only the reports themselves are free, and that there is a fee to get your actual credit score. Also, be sure you check your reports for accuracy and take care of any problems ASAP. You don't want any skeletons in your credit closet. In the end, the best thing you can do to keep your credit score healthy is to pay your mortgage, installment loan, and credit card bills on time. Also, be careful not to exceed account limits and make sure none of your accounts are delinquent. Getting an account turned over to a collection agency can really hurt your credit score. If you take these steps, you can achieve a higher, healthier credit score, and that's something that money just can't buy.
All right, so it was a great video. Let's go ahead and go back to the slides here. And this is about where to get your credit report from. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, as you just heard in the video, you can go to annualcreditreport.com as you see here on the slides, and you'll get your credit reports from each of those 3 agencies. The one I couldn't think of being Equifax, and the other 2 being Experian and TransUnion. They're all pretty much the same, and you can get reports from any of them. And one thing to note, as you'll see in red on this slide, be very aware of fraudulent use of your credit. That's another reason why you want to check your credit scores when you can, to make sure that, as the video showed, you have no skeletons in your closet, which may come from fraud and nothing that you have done. And one thing to note in particular, it sounds simple, but it's worth saying, if you have a credit card and you lose it, do not wait days to try to find it. As soon as you realize that it is gone, get hold of your credit card supplier and let them know that it's stolen and have them cancel your account. Even though you may not be liable for someone else making purchases on your card, it is not an easy thing to fix if allowed to continue. So if you lose your card, don't spend time looking for it, report it lost, get a new card.
All right.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about interest rates, and we'll hit this again when we get to auto loans. And as we have said repeatedly this morning, the higher the interest rate, the more money you pay above and beyond the cost of your purchases. So every time you use your card for whatever balance you're unable to pay, the company will charge you an interest rate on that, and you want to keep that rate as low as possible. Let's look at the next slide. For example, credit cards often have relatively high interest rates. In this particular example, a 14% interest rate, which is very, very high in today's financial world. If you make minimum payments, let's say your credit card requires you to pay at least $65 a month, you can see that large pile of money on the left. Over many years, you've paid that credit card company a great deal of interest. If you're able to pay slightly more than a minimum, your interest is dramatically reduced. And if you're able to pay considerably more than the minimum, you pay very little interest. We'll see this again as we look at auto loans. Obviously, you may find a time when it's not easy for you to make more than a minimum payment, and once in a while, that's of course fine. But when you can see here why you would want to do so. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about payday loans, and I'm not going to spend much time on these because this is something you do not want to have to do. Again, we all find ourselves in situations where some unexpected bill came up. I think the example on this slide says something about a failed car transmission, which is very expensive. And we can all find ourselves in these kinds of situations where you've been very responsible with your credit, you've maintained a relatively small balance, you're paying off a fair amount every month, and all of a sudden some unexpected bill hits. And so you may be tempted to take out what's called a payday loan, and it enables you to take out money in anticipation of your next salary check or payment from your job. But the payday loan companies, they charge you an enormous amount of money for doing so. So let's think about other things we've talked about this morning: the importance of having a bank account, the importance of opening up and getting a small number of credit cards to give you financial security and flexibility. It is generally always going to be better to take out a cash advance on a credit card, to take out a loan from a bank, even if there's a potential overdraft, even if you take out more from your credit card than you typically would, than going to a payday lender. And we'll see that here on the next slide. If you look at the numbers involved, again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but let's say that you needed to borrow $400 to cover that transmissions cost. Instead of thinking about an interest rate on a payday loan, they're going to charge you a huge amount of cash up front. In the example on the screen, that's $80. That may not seem like a large amount of money, but you're going to have to pay not only your $400 back in a month, you're also going to have to pay them that $80 back. If you annualize that into an interest rate, that's a 520% interest rate. That is an enormous amount of money. That is an additional 20% of your balance that you'll owe this lender. And what may happen to you is you can come up with a 400 in a month. Maybe you can't come up with a 480, and you'll have to do this all over again. And you do not want to get into that negative cycle. Next slide. The other things that can fall out of this, they can tap into your bank account, they can create overdrafts for you, your checks may bounce if you're unable to cover those balances. Again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. The takeaway is do everything you can to avoid these kinds of loans. Work with your credit card companies and work with your bank. And I like the little shark picture here. Thank you, Jerry. Okay, let's talk about something that I think virtually all of us run into from time to time, buying and financing a car. And Jerry, I think we have a page from the website here.
We do. I'm going to go ahead and navigate to that page right now. Here we go.
Okay. There are different types of car loans. We're not going to get into that too much today, but you can take out a car loan from your bank. You can usually take out a car loan from the car dealer from which you're buying the car. You may want to compare both and look at rates and terms, and we're going to talk about more of that in a moment. Again, a car loan is usually a fairly large part of your debt. Think about the kind of car you need and can afford and the monthly payments, and we have a video in a moment that will go through that. It's pretty helpful. Okay, I'm going to talk about the terms of the loans in just a moment. And we'll talk about interest rates in a moment. I think maybe we should just go to the video, Jerry. There we go.
There are lots of important decisions to make when buying a car. Do you need a truck for the farm or a small car for the city? How important is gas mileage to you? What color do you want? Once you decide what car you want, figuring out what you can actually afford can seem a bit complicated. Your monthly car payments might be affordable, but you also have to keep in mind other costs you'll have, like insurance payments, registration fees, and unpredictable expenses, such as a sudden hike in gas prices or the need for a big repair. So before you begin to shop around for a car, you might want to take a look at some of these costs so you're not caught off guard. First, let's figure out your budget. On average, people spend about 14 to 16% of their annual income before taxes on their transportation budget. That's a figure that includes all the expenses of owning a car, not just your car payments, but your gas, insurance, maintenance and repairs, and everything else as well. So for our example, let's use this as a guideline and look at what this might be for an annual income of $42,000. To figure out your budget, we'll take 16% of $42,000. That gives you $6,720 a year to spend on your car, or $560 a month. So let's look at the costs involved in getting a new basic subcompact sedan that has a sticker price of about $16,450. Now for any car, there are plenty of extra things you can get, like satellite radio or a sunroof, which can drive up the price. But we're going to forego the bells and whistles and stick to a basic model. And when you buy a new car, keep in mind that there are often extra fees in addition to what you pay for the car itself. You might have fees for things like documentation and destination charges for getting the vehicle from the manufacturer to the lot. Your registration fees may also be included, which can save you a trip to the DMV. Some of the fees you'll encounter, like registration, are non-negotiable because they are required by your state. But some things, like documentation fees and the base price of the car, may be flexible and open to some negotiating, depending on where you buy your car. So let's say that after negotiating the price of the car and the fees, and adding on your local taxes, you're paying $16,750 total. And in this case, you're going to finance the car entirely. That means you're not going to make any down payment or trade in another car. If you get a 6-year loan at a 3.5% interest rate, looking at an online calculator, your monthly payments will be around $260. But financing comes at a cost. In this case, you end up paying about $1,845 in interest on top of that $16,750 of principal over the course of your loan. So if you have the cash, you may consider buying the car outright. Or if you have a few thousand to spend on a down payment, you could lower your monthly payments and save in interest over time. But for this example, let's say you don't, and you've got a $260 car payment. Then there's gas. Let's say this car gets 32 miles to the gallon. and on average you drive about 1,250 miles per month. 1,250 miles divided by 32 miles per gallon gives us about 39 gallons of gas each month. If gas is around $4 per gallon, 39 times 4, we're looking at about $156 a month on gas. There's also your car insurance. Insurance prices are based on a number of factors, including where you live, your driving record, the type of car you're driving, even your job. If you're figuring this out for yourself, you might want to look at an insurance estimator, as rates can vary dramatically. Let's say you use an insurance calculator, put in your info, and see that you'll get a rate of about $100 a month. So adding our monthly car payment of $260 and an estimated gas expense of $156, plus the $100 for insurance, we already have a total of about $516 per month. Now let's look at some more periodic expenses you might have, like regular maintenance. Generally speaking, every 7,500 miles or so, it's recommended that you rotate your tires and change your oil. If you're driving 1,250 miles per month, that's about 15,000 miles per year. Divide that by 7,500 miles, and it looks like you might need to do this about twice a year. And let's say it costs you about $80 or so each time, for a total of $160 per year. Although some new cars come with a service agreement that covers some of these basic maintenance costs for the first few years. Now, going to a shop for regular maintenance can be a hassle, and you may wonder, is it worth it? Well, skipping tire maintenance and oil changes can cost you in the long run. A set of tires might last you longer if cared for properly, and a new set might cost you around $600. Not changing the oil will eventually wear out your engine, which can cost thousands to replace. So that $160 a year may be worth it over time. For the first few years, with a new car, you probably won't need to do much more maintenance than this. If you do, it might be covered by your warranty. You'll also have to re-register your car and probably get it inspected from time to time, depending on your state. This could be once a year or every few years, and can cost $45 to $300 or more. Let's say your registration and inspection will cost about $200 every 2 years, or another $100 per year. So adding $160 for maintenance and another $100 for registration and inspection, you get $260 per year. Divided by 12 months, we've got, well, about $22 per month. And if we take our previous monthly expenses, which were $516, adding 22, we've got $538. Then looking at our original budget of $560, if we subtract $538 for our monthly expenses, that leaves us with $22. So having calculated some of these costs of car ownership, we can see that this car could be inside your budget. Now, you may be thinking about that extra $22 a month. That's $264 a year. Why not accessorize? But having a little extra in your budget to cover unexpected costs is a good idea. It may come in handy if there's a sudden hike in the price of gas, or the cost of your insurance goes up. And once your warranty runs out, you'll have to pay for any repairs you might have, like replacing a headlight, or an oxygen sensor, or maybe even something bigger. So it's a good idea to keep these extra costs in mind when figuring out what you can spend. If your car payments alone put a strain on your budget, you might find yourself the owner of a car you can't afford to drive. And if a new car is too much for your budget, you might consider buying a used car, which we look at in another video.
All right, that's an
Thanks.
excellent breakdown. And again, this video is also available in Spanish. When you go to the website, if you need to, you go ahead and look in the upper right-hand corner. You should be able to turn that into Spanish for yourself.
Thank you, Jerry. It's a long video with a lot of different parts to it, but I think it's a very, very good example of budgeting, thinking about what your true expenses are versus how much you can afford and how that fits into your overall budget. So I think it was very worthwhile. And it's applicable to not just car loans, but any type of major purchase where there may be other costs that go with it. So let's look a little bit at the way loans work. I mean, we've talked a lot about exposure to high interest rates throughout this presentation, whether it's with respect to a bank loan, a credit card loan, a car payment. And I thought preparing this slide might be kind of instructive to really understand what's at risk. So let's say you take out $20,000 for a car loan, or for that matter, any particular type of loan. And let's say the term of the loan is 5 years and the interest rate is 3.5%. And again, there are calculators online that can do this. A banker can show you how to do this. That loan with those terms would require you to pay $364 a month for 5 years and result in total interest payments of $1,832. Let's look at the idea of taking out a loan for a slightly shorter period of time and being in debt for 1 year less. So you take out that same $20,000 loan for 4 years at that same interest rate. That's going to require you to come up with $447 a month. But if you are able to make that higher payment, that will reduce your total interest rate payments from the $1,832 to $1,462 a month. And then let's think about one other possible consideration when you look at a loan. Typically, the way loans work, the shorter the loan, the lower the interest rate. So what if instead of going from a 5-year loan to a 4-year loan at the same 3.5% rate, your car dealer says, if you take out a 4-year loan, I'll lower your interest rate to 3%. Well, the shorter 4-year period still requires a monthly payment of $443, not too much different than the one that we saw before at the slightly higher interest rate. But your total interest rate payments over that 4-year period fall further to $1,249. So as the slide says, think about the size of the payment that you can afford, what works best for you, what you need, and balance the amount of the monthly payment you can afford versus how much interest you're going to have to pay over the life of the loan. And I think, Jerry, that finishes our last module.
I hope that helped some folks understand how to navigate their own personal finances a little bit. And again, just to go back to that slide, you'll see so many ads, especially around the holidays, offering loans and especially payday loans. Do your best to avoid them. All right, do you really need that? And a new car is nice, but it might be wiser to look for a used car. I never buy a new car. I've always bought used, and they work just fine. So,
and often come with warranties.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me see if I have this survey in the notes here. No, I do not. Let me go ahead and type that into the chat real quick. We ask our audience to please fill out this survey. We are all about helping the community, and one of the best ways for us to really help the community is to ask you to sort of give us your feedback. Did we do good? Could it have been better? Should I shave my beard off? Go ahead and answer the questions in the survey there, and maybe it can help. Questions from Facebook. Thank you, Cynthia. We're about to open up real quick here. Just some more resources momentarily before we go into questions and answers. We do have clubs at all of the main high schools throughout Manatee and Sarasota. If you have a student at any of those schools, I suggest you ask about the You Need Us Now Club. Reach out, especially if you have students concerned about post-secondary, what they should do after high school. Our students can help you get your son or daughter moving in the correct direction. Lots of great advice there from our students in these clubs. In addition to that, in the future, we are having more community workshops. As you can see, we had this one here today, the financial literacy one. The next one will be at the end of January, and it's going to be all about trying to find an affordable place to live, which we all know is quite difficult these days. So,
thanks, Greg. With respect to questions, just to quickly recap, we covered how and why to open a bank account, budgeting and spending plans, and how this fits with your financial goals and concerns. Credit cards, how they work and how to use them. As Jerry said, why to avoid payday loans. And then we talked about financing a car and looking at loan terms. So all of these things are related to each other as you think about your finances. Work through each of them to help you come up with a plan that works for you and your family. And I appreciate all of your time today. If you do have questions, we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if there are any questions, remember, we have to be sort of cautious about exactly what we answer. We're not professional financial advisors. But one question we have from Facebook is, how many credit cards do you recommend having? I would say at least one. Don, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say at least one, maybe 2 or 3. Again, I think I'd mentioned you would typically want something like Visa or MasterCard. And then possibly if there's a store you frequent or a gas company where you typically fill up your car, maybe a card from a shop like that. But I would say at least one and probably no more than 3. That's just a personal opinion.
And I agree with that too. Anything more than 3, it'll look weird to different agencies when they're like, why do you have so many cards? So the real takeaway is, no matter how many you have, don't go crazy and spend everything. That money is not yours and you have to pay it back. So any money you do spend, pay it back as soon as possible, please. I'm not sure why my slide went away there. Can you still see the slide, Don?
I see you, Jerry.
Oh, well, I feel bad for you.
Are
Not sure
there
why
other
the slide
questions?
went away. Yeah, I think I found another question up here. Let me make sure this is shared so folks can see it. Where'd the chat go? There we go. Yeah, as far as credit cards are concerned, don't go too crazy. Another question is financing a car similar to buying a cell phone and paying it in monthly installments? I would say yes and no. The idea itself is similar, but with a car, of course, there's just so many different hidden fees, like you saw in that video, different costs that will arise as time goes on. Don, what are your thoughts?
I agree. And I'd also say, think about the balances involved. I mean, most of us cannot afford to buy a car outright without borrowing at least a part of the purchase price. It's a major purchase. Credit card companies, banks, those who are evaluating your credit will expect you to have a car loan if you buy a car, or certainly be fully understanding of it. But if you do something like, making payments on a cell phone month to month, while you may need to do that, and I don't mean to imply that's necessarily a bad thing, relative to buying a car, that's a much, much smaller balance purchase. And I would say you want to keep those kinds of purchases as much, you want to pay for them as much as you can for cash rather than using credit.
Yeah, I actually have a story about that. I was in Verizon, just trying to get my phone fixed. And this young woman was in there and she was kind of angry. And she was like, I can't believe I paid, twice the amount of the phone's actual cost. She didn't understand that, while she was making payments, the phone maybe cost $1,000, but she ended up paying about $2,000 for it. So just be conscious of that. If you can make more than the minimum payment, do it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jerry. I mean, to use your number of $1,000, I mean, that's a lot of money, but it's very different than, say, $20,000 for a car.
Yeah.
So perhaps you would need to borrow that, but try to pay it off over just a few months. For example, if you paid $200 a month for 5 months, that debt gets paid down very, very quickly. Whereas with a car loan, it would certainly typically take you 4, 5, 6 years to pay that.
We have a couple of other good questions too. The first one is from a young student of ours, actually. He asks, what would be your credit score if you have no credit? For example, a young person, getting their first credit card, would you start at like 0 and build your way up? The answer is you sort of start in the middle. And the score sort of depends on your behavior with the card. Of course, as a young person, you automatically have things that count against you. The shorter time period you have a card, it doesn't look that good. And they'll understand that you're young though. But if you're older and you have no cards, you should get some and start building some credit up. But as time goes on and you have that card and you continue making payments, your score will always chip up unless you fall into a rut of not paying or maxing out your cards. As long as you're proactive in building that credit and paying into it, it's only a matter of time until your score goes up. Time will always go back into your favor. Another question we have is a credit card the best way to build credit? Can I apply for a loan instead? Don, would you like to answer that?
You certainly can. I mean, I think you should not consider a relationship with a bank and a credit card as separate. I think it's generally a good idea to have both. You want to have a bank relationship, which can add to your overall credit score. You can take out a loan from a bank possibly at a better rate than you can with a credit card. It's going to depend. It's nice to have both. And again, as Jerry just reiterated or mentioned again, if you have loans from both, but you're responsible about paying them down month to month, that can be a helpful thing. If you're a young person, it's a good idea to open a bank account. And I'd also add to Jerry's comments, they'll look at the fact that you're a student in good standing or that you have a good job. Just as you may not have a lot of positives yet in your credit account, so to speak, you won't have negatives either. It's all a matter of how you behave after you get that card or take out that loan.
Good. We had a question in Spanish and I was translating it just now, and luckily my colleague Cynthia translated it for me. Thank you. The question is, we have a credit card that was closed, so we cannot use it. We keep paying for it. Can it be reactivated?
So does that mean that you still have a balance on that card?
It seems like that the card was closed, so they can't use it, but they keep paying for it.
Yeah, I think it depends on the circumstance. I would suggest to whomever wrote that question to go back and speak with the source of that credit, whether it's a credit card company or a store card or wherever they may have gotten it, and speak to them directly about the terms.
Yeah, that's one of those questions that's best for the financial professionals, I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
We don't have enough information to answer it, sadly. It is something that you should take care of, though. It is something you should reach out and get that going, because it's frustrating to pay for something, especially if you're unable to use it. So definitely reach out and talk to them about that. And she does have a balance on the card, she says.
Yeah, speak to the credit card company.
Yeah, go ahead. And I want to say too, with everything going on with coronavirus and COVID-19, card companies are being much more flexible with payments. You should reach out if you have a high balance on any of your cards, especially if you're having trouble with work right now. Tell your card company, email them, tell them you're out of work.
Jerry, that's a great point. I think there is a place on the Bank America website with COVID information.
Indeed. Let me see if we can go look at that real quick. Let me just Google it. Can you see my screen still?
Yes.
Let's see what comes up when we search for this stuff here. Small business help.
Loan assistance.
Here we go.
Waiving fees.
This is not Bank of America's website, but NerdWallet is a good website I've used in the past before. So this is just one bank, and this is just a list of all the different things they're doing to help folks who are dealing with these issues right now. So any issues you're having, especially if you're having trouble with employment, definitely reach out to that lending agency or your bank and tell them what's going on, because everybody's being more flexible right now.
Even the credit card companies, yes.
Especially the credit card companies, absolutely. Let me see if there's any more questions. Don't see any more. If you have questions and you don't want to share, or if you want to just talk personally, this is my email right here, jerry@unidosnow.org. And if you'd like to call me, go ahead and call me. You may have to leave a message, but I'll get back to you, okay? Of course, we always want to suggest, if you're on any social media, this is being live streamed on Facebook right now. We have an Instagram where we also share some really nice stories about our students going to college and things like that too. And of course, there's our website, unidosnow.org. You can see all of the things we have to offer. All right. So from everyone at Unidos Now, Don, thank you so much for volunteering to help us out today.
Pleasure.
We really appreciate that. And of course, none of this would be possible without the help of the Barancik Foundation. They're a great donor of ours. They've made it possible for us to put on these workshops to, sort of reach out and try to help people during these trying times, as we continue to hear these are trying times. But thank you to the Barancik Foundation. If there are no more questions, let me double check in the chat here. I think that is it. All right. Thanks, everybody. I hope you learned something. If you missed anything, this will be recorded and on Facebook forever. So go ahead and watch it, take some notes. And of course, please use the Bank of America website. There's so many little classes and videos you can take, and it is all translated into Spanish as well. And yes, this will also be available on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube, type Unidos Now in the search bar, and you should be able to find our channel with other workshop videos and things that'll help you. All right. Stay safe, everybody. Stay warm in the weeks to come. It's going to get a little chillier. And just be careful out there and be wise with your money. Have a good day.
Have a good day.